Chapter 25. Next time, we use a double. It's not unusual when doing breakfast radio to be involved in a stunt or two, and most of the time they were both pretty amusing and fun. Drive a monster truck around the local oval to promote the trucks there this weekend? Sure, throw me the keys. Pour this bucket of ice water over my head to help promote motor neurone disease awareness? Not a problem, I'll grab a towel. Eat a spoonful of chili sauce every time my co-host got a question correct in an insane quiz we came up with that morning? Well, what can possibly go wrong there? I can tell you that after 6 spoonfuls of chili sauce on an empty stomach, I sure didn't feel the greatest. But there was no lasting damage, so we'll chalk that up as a success. But there was a time when stunts were involved that more often than not, I'd find a creative way to inadvertently injure myself, much to the amusement of my co-host. Hi Alex, thanks for constantly helping me back to my feet, and the worry of my ever-loving partner and now wife, sorry Donna. Here's a few of the lowlights. Run on for a long time. To promote a new gym in town, and not the same gym we spent 4 hours outside of because nothing was ready for open day, a stunt was devised in the form of a challenge. Let's find out which announcer could run the furthest distance on a treadmill within an hour time limit. Now, 2 obvious problems sprang to mind immediately here. The first being that Alex was quite a few inches taller than I was and had a far greater stride than I did, meaning I'd really have to pull out all the stops to get even close to his distance, let alone exceed it. The second was that I didn't have a single stop to pull out, as I'm a shocking runner, jogger, anything other than strolling at normal pace. Unless it was a 10-second sprint during my high school years to catch the nearest tram, forget about it. I'd be gasping and wheezing faster than Grandpa's hand-me-down 1950s mower. Alex had running experience, occasionally went jogging, and could do quite well on a treadmill. This was a terrible idea before it even started. Picture an endurance race between a finely tuned motorbike and a drunk rolling around in a shopping trolley with 2 missing wheels. And you pretty much have pictured the upcoming battle on the treadmill. Well, it would have looked like that if the personal trainers at the gym hadn't suggested at my 40-minute mark that I should probably stop, as I'd gone white as a sheet and my matchstick-like legs were starting to shake like an unbalanced cement mixer. They were seriously concerned that I would either pass out mid-run, now that is dedication to a run, or possibly die standing up. Plus, I was starting to gasp like a blocked-up locomotive. So they stopped the machine, lowered me down to sitting position, and pumped plenty of sports drinks into me, so I would look a little less see-through. Non-surprisingly, Alex won that challenge by more than 4 kilometres, and we both agreed to cross running challenges off the list of future stunt ideas. Hold your ribs and prepare to jump. In a fun way to fundraise, a local charity group was offering skydives. The deal was if you signed up and managed to raise at least $1,000 for the charity, I think it was for some refugees, possibly, then you were invited to jump out of a perfectly good plane at a high altitude and come floating back down to Earth. And being the local radio station that was promoting this endeavour, we were invited to participate in both the fundraising and the jump itself once we met the target. So one morning on The Breakfast Show, we put it to the community and asked for any odd jobs to help pay our charity fee. A local gym rang up. Seriously, what is the deal with gyms? Especially with me and things going wrong at gyms. And offered up a few $100 in sponsorship if we helped out during the day by toweling down people doing a workout and trying not to get in the way. So we rolled up to the gym with towels in hand and proceeded to towel dry people left, right and centre and participate in various gym challenges. Alex had to take on a squatting front plate raise for 30 seconds. He did quite well. Whereas I, for some reason, ended up on the world's most intense leg press machine. Now, maybe the personal trainer that was leading us around didn't like the fact that he had to lead us around for the morning, or hated charity, or just radio announcers in general. But he decided that for my challenge, he really needed to stack on the plates and take off the safety guards, which resulted in a ton of weight pushing down on my not very strong matchstick legs and compacting everything up to my chest in record time. I got crunched up like a car in the crusher. A muscle in my chest went twang, and suddenly there were 2 trainers pushing the weight back up and Alex helping me out shakily to my feet. The trainer apologised profusely for taking the guards off, very fearful that he may lose his job, and Alex really wanted to try and get him fired when he had no idea about my limited lifting capabilities. I limped out of the gym and figured that in a couple of days' time the pain would subside and I'd be getting on with life. 2 weeks later, I found myself on the table at the local myotherapy clinic where a tiny woman was bringing a fully grown man to absolute tears trying to get everything back into place. She had the incredible strength of a hydraulic press as she pulled and shifted muscles back into some semblance of working order. She also suggested that maybe it wasn't the wisest idea to hurl myself out of a plane while everything was hurting so much. But miss out on my very first skydive? Perish the thought! Note, I'm an absolute idiot, really. So you can just imagine the breathtaking pain I felt when they strapped me into the parachute pack a mere week later and insisted that everything had to be cinched in tight, which they did with plenty of enthusiasm, especially with the straps across my chest, causing me to almost burst into tears into my very tight goggles. Luckily, I hid it very well. Only my wife really knew how much pain I was in at the time. And they probably thought my eyes were misting up with the upcoming excitement. It also didn't help that the plane was smaller than most hatchbacks, and given that it was a tandem jump, it was a very tight and painful ride up to about 8,000 feet. Now, there is a good end to this story, thankfully, and that is when we finally jumped out, the pure adrenaline completely washed away any pain and discomfort I had on the way down. Once he popped the chute, it was one of the most serene and beautiful experiences I've ever had, taking in the gorgeous sights of the countryside in amazing quiet. If only it could have lasted a few minutes or perhaps hours or maybe even days longer. And I'd highly recommend it when you're not walking around attempting to hide a chest injury. Of course, the jolt when we landed shot fire through my chest and reminded me of the hilariously awful journey I'd been on to get to this point. Luckily, a couple of weeks of rest on the couch and non-stunt related work activity later, and everything slowly returned to normal. My chest eventually not complaining every time I did, well, anything. Well, that was until I got a lesson at wrestling school, that is. Throw this hand up so he knows where to hit you. So the wrestling was coming to town and I was getting stupidly excited because I've been a bit of a wrestling fan since way back. And not only were we going to interview some of the wrestlers, names I recognised like Iron Man Rob Conway, Jimmy Wang Yang and Mike Mondo, but the promoter really wanted us involved in the back end of a match, to the point where Alex and I would end up in a wrestling-related stunt together. Hands up if you can see how badly this is going to end up. Since I was more than happy to take the fall, do a job in a wrestling match? Of course, I'm not Hulk Hogan. It was suggested that I attend a lesson at the nearest wrestling school to learn how to bump properly, fall safely and make it look good. And fast forward 2 weeks later, there we were standing outside a random house an hour away from home, wondering if we turned up at the wrong place. But no, it turned out to be the right place as somehow the owner, a long-term Australian wrestler, had managed to construct a decent-sized wrestling ring in a very flimsy-looking shed out the back. There was just enough room between the shaky walls and the edge of the ring for some bench seats, so my heavily pregnant wife and future son Jackson watched on with equal parts amusement and concern. One of the guys I trained with explained later that on more than one occasion, wrestlers had gone over the ropes and right through a side wall covered in old wrestling posters and ending up in the garden. Luckily, I was there just to learn how to land rather than fly, so any high spots were not on the agenda. First up, it was the back bumps, landing safely on your back, which I performed okay as long as I remembered to actually push off with my legs and not just topple over like I was a very stiff log. But then the front bumps started to get more and more painful as I continually failed to get my hands in the way quick enough to absorb the impact. So the part of my body that I kept landing on all morning while learning to land safely? Why, my chest, of course. Push forward, land on chest, throw out arms to cushion the... Oh, too late. Okay, try again. Push forward, land on chest, throw out arms to cushion... No, got the order incorrect again. This happened a lot. And it wasn't long after the session that my old skydiving injury reintroduced itself. Glorious! I was about to do a wrestling spot and I could barely move without wincing again, courtesy of my very painful left-hand side. Now, the plan on the night of the show was that I would be the manager for the Aussie rate tank Kelly Slater, and Alex would represent visiting ex-WWE superstar Serena Deeb. While the professionals fought in the ring, the unprofessionals on the outside would yell at each other and anything within range. Fan favourite Serena would win, Alex would roll in and celebrate. Kelly would attack Serena, I'd jump on the apron and grab Alex, Kelly would throw a kick, he'd duck, and I'd get planted falling to the floor. This plan changed a couple of times, with the booker coming up with a few different angles. And eventually it was decided that after Serena won, I'd get in the ring yelling and screaming in her face. And eventually push her where she slapped me, in return spinning me around and right into the path of an Alex spear. Job done. Now, the plan came with some very specific instructions too. Nick the booker explained that when I spun around, I had to throw up one of my arms and Alex would use that as a signal to spear me on that side to avoid catching my arms and possibly breaking one or both when we landed. Yeah, no pressure with the guy already walking around with a very sore chest. But we agreed, and I secretly prayed nothing would go wrong when the match got underway. The girls had a fantastic back and forth clash involving some painful looking slams and a comedy spot with the ref. While that was going on, I was quite enjoying yelling at Alex and random crowd members while praising the virtues of the rate tank. When it was all said and done and Serena scored the win, I rolled in and got right in her face, accusing her of cheating, amongst other things. I got so into the yelling and carrying on that I completely forgot the next part. "Push me," she whispered while I was waving my arms around a lunatic. "What?" "Don't forget to push me." "Oh, yeah." So I pushed her. She slapped me, and I stumbled around rather than spun into a crunching Alex tackle. He stood over me, the crowd cheered, they both did some victory poses as I sold the injury and rolled out of the ring. Kelly and I supported each other as we crawled all the way out the back, but it wasn't until a cheering Alex walked out through the curtain that I realised the push wasn't the only part of the plan that I'd forgot. Which side did I tackle you on? Hopefully not the really sore side." "I don't remember," I said. "Which arm did I end up throwing up?" "I didn't look," he shrugged. "Just ran into you." Luckily, he didn't hit me in the really tender part, and we had a great laugh over the fact that we just made it through a wrestling match and I didn't need a stretcher to carry me out the back. Besides, there'd always be the opportunity to spend some time in the local emergency department the next time we got involved in a stunt for the breakfast show. Like an egg and spoon race or something extremely dangerous. Like a competitive game of the card game Go Fish, maybe.